Welcome, YouTube types. It's a bit of a chilly day. It's a cold day in hell when I. It's a cold day in hell when I don't go outside when it's very, very, very cold out. Like single digits Fahrenheit cold out. So today we're going to talk about viewer chats. Maybe we'll cover some financial stuff, like, the price of silver being over $100 an ounce. Things like that. Now, our regular viewers would know that back in 2020, in March of 2020, we were citing the fact that silver prices were down to $12 an ounce, which made the financial crash of 2020 look very odd, very suspect, very questionable. Very questionable indeed. So, in any case, we'll show weather forecasts for both space and Earth, as we do. And so, pull up your coffee cup and buckle up because we'll talk about whatever we want to talk about. there could be rants to follow, as the channel's been known to do regular software rants. So, not to look down on anybody who uses terrible software or anything, but I'll bet there are some of you out there that aren't satisfied with your software experience right now. Are you? Let us know in the comments whether you viewed live or in syndication what OS you're using to view this video. Are you using Microslop? Are you using Google Android? Are you using Mac OS? Are you using Linux, Mint, Ubuntu, something like that? Are you using... Let us know in the comments what OS you're using to view the video. Because there are, shall we say, problems with all the platforms from Microslop. But the Linux platforms really are, the only problem with them is software compatibility. So if you're a gamer, you may want to have a dual boot. But if you want a secure computer, and look, the Android operating system is based on Linux. The Apple operating systems are based on Unix. So, though, open source software that's real computer nerds making sure stuff is patched all the time, more or less. If you want an instant patch, open source. And I guess hopefully that's one to grow on, folks. All right, so we'll talk about space weather and Earth weather, things like the sunspot number. If we have any sunspot growth, we'll see what the Sundar Pichai filament did. As yesterday on this stream, we named a solar coronal filament after the CEO of Alphabet. I think it may have collapsed or something like that, which is an interesting metaphor, perhaps. So bear with me a minute here. I'll bring up our space weather console and we'll give you a rundown. We'll even do a weather forecast for Lehigh Valley. That's not always in the thing, but right now we've got incredibly low temperatures. Low highs and low lows. I think the forecast high for today is like 15 or 17 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's on the cool side, is what I would say. Anyway, here's what's going on with the sun for the past few hours. That's the GOES 19. And I don't think I saw any comments about what OS you're using. We'll just assume that you're viewing the videos at a library and you don't know what OS you're using. That's okay, boomers. We will put your chats on the screen from time to time throughout the stream. We anticipate this stream lasting about another 40 minutes. But the sun doesn't look super active at the moment, so it doesn't look like it's going to be super exciting. We've got some movements by the GOES 19 as it orients itself properly. Some minor prominences. We do have some activity there at the southeastern limb. And some prominences rising there in the northeastern limb, but pretty inactive star here. El Sol, the most interesting one at which to gaze. Let me put the home page in the chat. And that way you can see us on socials, press that share button, and help the channel to be on screens. Even when you purchase ads on YouTube, it's not as easy to accomplish that as you may think, even with the popularity of space weather and private space flight and so on. So back to me, and yeah, any news stories that anybody would like us to cover, let us know, and we will consider it. But yeah, silver being over $100, that would be a thing to pay attention to, I think. Silver over $100 an ounce. Now, that doesn't look great for world currencies. But the good news is that commodities, if you own them, will never have zero value. So whether it's a barrel of oil or a truckload of firewood, it'll always have intrinsic value, unlike fiat currency. Yeah, fiat currency. So anyway, just thought I'd bring that up. That's a pretty interesting news story. Silver at over $100 an ounce. So anyway, but the X-ray flux still remains at about, we're actually down into the B class background flux now. So the sun's quite inactive. Setting spots have not produced any big flares, at least not any time recently. But there still is some possibility you can see some big coronal loops here hanging out off the edge. See all that coronal looping? That's as sunspots interact across the solar equator over here. So there is still potential for large flares right there. But besides that, things are pretty calm indeed. So here's the latest imagery of that coronal looping. Let's get rid of the magnetogram and show the continuum instead. There's the HMI instrument from SDO, as well as Earth scale and SDO 171 angstroms. Here's a holistic view. And we don't see a whole lot of action from these active regions. But we'll keep an eye on them. And when I say ion, well, the pun is intentional. Cosmic ray flux remains low here. 22-year low for cosmic ray flux. If they say energy from space is increasing, I don't know what kind. And if anybody on YouTube just says the word energy, and they don't say what kind of energy, they're not talking science. I don't know what they're talking. Here's Cygnus X3, the high mass X-ray binary. It's my favorite object in the Milky Way galaxy besides, the sun and Earth and things, and of course Sagittarius A star. But Cygnus X3 is an X-ray binary that's even farther away than Sagittarius A star, the massive radio source at the galactic core of the galaxy. This thing is a cosmic ray point source, unlike Sagittarius A star, another indication that the galaxy is nothing like the solar system. Yeah, the galaxy is nothing like the solar system. Were you aware of this? I hope. All right, so here's the University of Reading forecast for CMEs. It's going to show us if we see any more CMEs headed toward Earth. And why don't the controls work? Oh. All right. So it doesn't look like any new CMEs headed toward Earth. Earth is represented by this black circle. That also shows ACE, which is about 1 million miles away from Earth. We'll talk about that in a moment. No new CMEs headed Earth's way. That's the story. There's the forecast. Again, that is from University of Reading. Please close. My God. All right, so here's the real-time solar wind. We do have a little perturbation here. Looks like a coronal hole high-speed stream showing up as the density drops off and the speed comes up along with some strong magnetic fields. This looks like geomagnetic unrest conditions, folks. If this would have stayed like this, solar wind density of 1 proton per cubic centimeter, solar wind velocity of 664 kilometers a second, and a BTBZ of total field 11 nanotesla with a BZ of -9. That would create a geomagnetic storm, but that's already subsided. So the vertical component of the magnetic field, which is the top line there, this red line, that's the vertical component, the BZ as it's called. And it has swung back negative again. So this may yield at next update geomagnetic unrest or even a KP5, geomagnetic storm conditions, but it is mild. It looks like a coronal hole high-speed stream. Again, we talked about L1 earlier, Lagrangian point 1, where ACE and Discover are located. That is Lagrangian point 1 there, shown in this diagram, not to scale. It's 1/93rd of the way to the sun. That is where Discover and ACE orbit that gravitational point, L1. Earth's magnetosphere is looking calm here. This shows magnetohydrodynamic pressure. It is a model, but it takes into account a lot of data. It's called the Space Weather Modeling Framework, and the geospace is calm. Hi, Freundile. Hi, Freundile. Cheers. Ghost magnetometer is pretty smooth here, but you do see that impact, that coronal hole high-speed stream impact that just showed up. That did cause a little minor perturbation in the ghost magnetometer, as you would expect. Again, we may see minor geomagnetic storm conditions kick up depending on what happens with that vertical magnetic component. As far as the likelihood of new space weather happening, NOAA agrees that we'll get maybe geomagnetic unrest or mild storm conditions, but nothing major from that coronal hole high-speed stream. The radial flux has dipped, now down to 143 solar flux units. That's the black line. The red line is the sunspot number, reported here by Royal Observatory Belgium. The King's sunspot number came up a little bit from yesterday, right around the monthly average here, actually, which is this blue line. And we're at about 112 sunspots. 112 is the sunspot number. Do we have any new CMEs headed our way? Well, let's find out the hard way. Find out the hard way. And hoping Stereo A's data has been updated or is back up to date or whatever. We appreciate you, the pedantic viewer. That is why. And by the way, don't forget to sort your chat to say live chat, because this way you'll see all the messages. As you can see there, perhaps it didn't show me this message from Frowndial. All right, so anyway, we have seen some CME activity here. Is it earthly directed? Well, we're going to find out. But if so, it's pretty stealthy, and it's not major. So yeah, I don't think there's anything earthly directed on that coronagraph. Let us know in the comments if you disagree, agree, are neutral, or let us know in the comments if you refuse to type comments. That would be a paradox, wouldn't it? But since the universe and life is full of them, I say embrace those paradoxes. All right, it looks like we have data from Stereo A once again. That's nice. Now, Stereo A is ahead of Earth, orbitally speaking. Earth is chasing Stereo A and losing as Stereo A speeds away from Earth. Earth would be off in this orientation to the left of Stereo A's coronagraph. And we do have some updated data there. At least early today, the 28th. But nothing earthly directed there as far as I can tell. So let's move on. Location of planets shown here. Keep in mind, this is not to scale. It's nowhere near scale. These are things that are very far apart. And that's the big difference that people often sort of seem to overlook when it comes to the galaxy. The solar system is really small. Even though things are really far apart in the solar system, even relatively speaking, they're really far apart. But outside the solar system, things are really, really far apart. And so there's an interstellar environment around the sun, you know, stars that are within 400 light years, let's say. That's sort of the interstellar neighborhood. And that's nothing like a solar system. And then if you get 26,000 light years away, then you're at the galactic core, and the massive blue stars that are orbiting the galactic core at solar wind level speeds, hundreds of kilometers per second, those aren't like the solar system. So there's literally nothing like the solar system in the galaxy. It takes the sun 250 million years or so to make one rotation around the galaxy. So it's like it's not similar in any way. People think, oh, because the sun orbits the galactic core over 250 million years, that the galaxy is just like the solar system, and it's very much nothing like the solar system. When things are very far apart, they don't interact very much, is my point. So anyway, that's where planets are located. The proton flux continues to subside here. No major radio blackouts. The X-ray flux, again, it's at an upper B-class range. So we've seen a decrease in solar activity here, both in sunspot number and the background X-ray flux. Next, I talked about current sheets earlier. So let's see if Earth has crossed one into the North Pole sector that we see. Nope, but like I said in the title, crossing that current sheet today, crossing out of the South Pole current sheet and into the North Pole current sheet. So there are actually two current sheets to cross here. The exit of the South Pole sector represents one, and then there's another one when Earth will enter the North Pole sector. It's just a small coronal hole. This is not going to provide any major space weather when the high-speed stream arrives. If we even see a high-speed stream, this is not a trans-equatorial coronal hole. However, it is close enough to the equator to put its magnetism in the heliosphere. So there you go. There's sector boundary crossing today. It's definitely not going to kill you. Sorry, folks. Doomsday's been canceled. So here's our line of sight coronal hole plot. This North Pole oriented coronal hole here. We do have some trans-equatorial bits that are like opening up now. So let's head back to the GOES for a second and look at 195 angstroms. We may be able to actually see that happening since that is showing up just today. So right up here, you may see some new coronal holes up in this area right here, right, it's, give it a minute, right up here. And that's not necessarily that they're opening, it's just that the corona is very bumpy, as you can see over here. We do have active regions here, so the corona is very bumpy here. There's low contrast because you're looking at a very bright object in ultraviolet light. Not to be confused with ultraviolet light, the light cast upon the viewers of A Clockwork Orange. Let's go back to, let's look at 304 angstroms here. This is the sort of the best overall wavelength. There are people at NASA that are paid to just stare at this screen all day. I kid you not. And I see some comments coming through here. Thanks for typing those. The Marion Lewis says, in Toronto, the Naughties are having trouble walking in the snow. Yo, I had trouble walking in the snow yesterday. You don't even know. I I tried to, somebody cross-country skied this trail. And if you've never tried to hike a trail in deep snow that's only been cross-country skied, it's to quote Mike Stacklasa of Red Letter Media, it's there could be cursing involved. It was hard enough that a half-mile hike took 20 minutes. It was bad. I mean, and you know, when the snow's very deep, if you try to go faster, you don't really go any faster. You just like instantly get gassed. So yeah, in everywhere, people are having trouble walking in the snow. It's here in Lehigh Valley, there's knee-deep snow, and it's got like an icy crust on top, so it's very taxing. Snowshoes are recommended, but cross-country skis will have you flying. I know, those cradling phones or lacking snow boots are having issues. Like, it's very easy to get hit by a car in these conditions. So, like, seriously, it's the road shrinks. The road shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. So have the right gear, have the right plan. It looks like some of these sites might be down, folks. Let's look at the red light here from El Teide, just to briefly look at sunspots. Just today's sunspots are fine. 16 images. So there is a sunspot scenario. That's red light from El Teide, Spain's ground-based solar observatory. And we do have 3 sunspot groups over here. They're looking pretty magnetically simple. This is probably the most magnetically complex sunspot group. But again, we do have some chance of flares over here at this western limb. This is called the western limb if you're new to space weather, because that's where sunspots set. They rise over here, making this the east. They set over here, making this the west. That's how it works. And let's look at solar filaments. Perfect. Still at El Teide, Spain here, looking at hydrogen alpha now. And so this is the Sundar Pichai filament. This one looks like it has collapsed. Perhaps foreshadowing of Google's share price. So, but in any case, this filament here has changed around a bit. And, oh, we called this one the Eric Schmidt filament. Here, look at this nice, straight, upstanding young filament here. Eric Schmidt. So, yeah. We could see coronal mass ejections. Solar flares aren't that likely because these sunspots aren't that active, but remember, folks, coronal mass ejections and solar flares are separate phenomena. So I guess I'll say it again. Solar flares are photons. You know, photons, like think light, photons. Coronal mass ejections are protons. Think gas. They're like gas because they are gas. and solar flares are photons, like light, because they are light, photons, X-rays. So don't get them conflated. We see solar flares all the time without coronal mass ejections. and coronal mass ejections all the time without solar flares. So they're not, they're separate phenomena. Tell your friends and foes. And look, it gets misreported every time there's a major solar storm striking Earth. It gets misreported each and every time. So do one thing, follow us on X. If you want to name filaments after people, like we just did recently, named a filament after Eric Schmidt yesterday. And thanks for following us, QFS, the Queefs Redemption Center. Ah, well done, Queefs Redemption Center. We really appreciate that follow. And thanks to Elon Musk for getting rid of all the bots on Twitter, pardon my sarcasm. And yes, it's still called Twitter. All right, so the GOES electron flux is back into warning levels, at least for the GOES 19's measurements. And that's midnight local time for the satellite, so it's going to be a major electron storm, and it's going to go on. So expect bad performance from your GPSs, especially around the equator at noon. This is the kind of environment they'll have to communicate with your handset through. These free electrons from the thermosphere, ionosphere, plasmasphere, all the way down to ground level cause signal refraction. That is why your GPS doesn't work around the equator at noon. The ionosphere puffs up and your signal can be off by thousands and thousands of miles. I did a bike ride one time with an average speed of over 10,000 miles per hour. I rode from Allentown to Missouri and back in 42 minutes. So just to give you an idea of how off they can be. Now, this is the deabsorption region predictions. This is where we would expect radio blackouts to be occurring, and they're going to be mild right now because the background X-ray flux of the closest star is at a B class. So we do have this slight equatorial brownout thing going on, but not a total signal blackout. And, but yeah, likelihood of large flares is not that high. So don't expect very many radio blackouts, but expect pretty bad GPS performance. As those who live around the equator know, the GPSs, they work great at nighttime, but from like 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., they work like crap. Here in Eastern PA, sometimes you get very terrible performance from like 10 to 2 or something like that, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And it's because your GPS satellite is 25,000 miles of altitude. It's at a very, very high geosynchronous orbit. This diagram is just showing you where the F region is and so forth. That is where the electron flux is measured. So this is measured at the F flare using signal refraction. And let's move on. Here's what the ionosphere currently looks like, courtesy of Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology. There's the anomalygram, anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. And let's actually play this map for once. I don't always play this, but when I do, I'm still not the most interesting man in the world. Here we go. The anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. Has the South Atlantic anomaly moved? Looks like it's moved back to the equator, right off the coast of South America, way up here. The African anomaly is still over here, right at the equatorial west coast of Africa. Very plain to see on the map there. The South Atlantic anomaly, I don't know, it may have split. There may be two South Pacific anomalies now. It's definitely not over the South American continent. It spent many years right here where my pointer is. South Atlantic anomaly looks like it's on the move currently. Does that portend doomsday? Well, not really. And let's transition to Earth weather. And then I'll put your chats back on the screen here. Thanks to everybody who's taken the time to type comments. Keep in mind, we do view all comments on the channel, even if we are unable to respond to every comment. I'm going to put up less frames than that. How about 15 frames? That's better. As the sun rises over the Atlantic, these are the gays of our lives. Just kidding, folks. All right, what do we have here? There are still fools who believe the world is flat despite seeing these things. I know, but AS7X, it's true. It's true. To quote, who was that guy? That wasn't Bob Backlund, was it? That's Kurt Angle. It's true. It's true. Mike says his neighbor hasn't even dug out his car yet. Dude, it's bad. Like, I still feel like going around and helping people, but that's not always the best idea. Sometimes it is the best idea, though. So, yeah. The road shrinks. Put your phone away. Good advice. Have a light. Have reflective clothes, stuff like that. Minimize your chances of getting run over because those fully self-crashing cars out there cannot see you. Pedestrians, cyclists, the fully self-crashing vehicles can't see you. They're terrible at their fully self-crashing, quote, capabilities, end quotes. Anyway, that's what Earth is looking like. By the way, join the Croissant Earth Society if you want to know how Earth is really shaped. We'll tell you how Earth is really shaped. And you can even, get a discount if you head to the Redbubble shop by spinning the wheel. Spin the wheel and then join the Croissant Earth Society. Stop believing NASA's lies. Tell your friends and foes, perhaps with this lovely all-over print tote bag, when you go to the grocery store in the line, tell people that Earth is actually shaped like the French breakfast pastry. Croissant Earth Society, when will you stop believing NASA's lies? Yeah, we don't troll the same way as other channels, folks. I've been doing this for a while. In fact, I've been getting in trouble on social media since before MySpace and before the word social media was a thing. Gaming, message boards, game forums. Gaming is ruthless, as it should be. It's a sport. Here's a U.S. water vapor map as we continue through our meteorology segment. And let me address some of these questions here, or at least this question. Can you show the Van Allen belt? Not really. Not really. But when we show this image, I can show you a diagram of the Van Allen belt, but we don't have like a real-time data animation of the Van Allen belts because there are multiple Van Allen belts. And there's an inner and an outer one. But if you look at the Geospace Magnetosphere movie that we showed, this movie right here, this is going to give you an idea of where they are. The inner Van Allen belt is almost inside of this. The outer Van Allen belt is toward the outside of this. This is really showing you the outer Van Allen belt. Earth's magnetosphere extends to about 12,000 miles. I'm sorry, 12 Earth diameters. So, yeah, this is showing you a model of where the Van Allen belts likely are. So, I don't know. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps. But yeah, I'm not aware of any like real-time data for the Van Allen belts themselves. But those Geospace Magnetosphere movies, they are a valid model, the space weather modeling framework. Anyway, we've got this moisture moving across the western U.S., dry air moving across Texas and Oklahoma. Look at that dry air, but guess what? More moisture coming through here into Texas as very cold air makes its way across the U.S. again. Thanks, Canada. By the way, Mr. Bordages, I apologize. I accept Mr. Bordages as an American. So post away as an American. All right. Anyway, so yeah, I can't really show the Van Allen belts per se because the Van Allen probes, I don't think they're really sufficient to provide a model anyway. Distracted humans are bad drivers. That's true. Distracted fake AI is the worst driver, though, because there is zero accountability. And our roads are not a testing laboratory for fully self-crashing junk. So I'm just showing this because we do have some Lehigh Valley viewers. Shout out to Kathy Roll if you've tuned in. Here's the Lehigh Valley forecast showing at the ABE airport currently 9 degrees Fahrenheit. I'd say that's on the cool side. But today we're expecting a high near 17 Fahrenheit, wind chill values as low as -2 Fahrenheit. So that's, yeah, a low around -2 tonight. Tomorrow, a high 17. Once again, Friday, a high near 15. It's a little bit iceboxy in PA. So here's the U.S. Doppler radar. Lake effect snow continue as snow piles and piles and piles and piles and piles and piles up, especially east of Ontario, as it's known to do. Toronto got record snow. Shout out to Torontons. Tarantinoonians. Shout out to Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson and their new drummer. Did you know Rush has a new drummer? I wonder if she can write lyrics like Neil Peart. That would be awesome, right? Here's satellite imagery from windy.com. They've got a great mobile app, by the way. If you've never seen it, windy.com. Highly recommend. It's got all kinds of cool features. For example, you could look at, oh, I don't know. Let's put up one that we don't usually look at. Sea temperature. This one figures into how weather plays out. Sea temperature. There you go. Those of you who live at, for example, if you live on Cape Cod, you probably even know why the winter continues to get colder after the sun is already returning to the northern hemisphere. It's because oceans have this thing called water in them, and water has a very high latency of heat. Water likes to hold on to heat. It likes to stay cold, and it likes to require a lot of energy to get hot. That's literally what a calorie is, the amount of energy required to raise 1 milliliter of water 1 degree, or is it 1 centiliter? 1 milliliter, I think. Anyway, that's sea surface temperature. And yeah, this figures in, right? So when we have hurricanes and so forth, we use this type of data to tweak forecasts. It'll also show you cool stuff like sulfur dioxide. So for example, if you're looking at a volcano like Kilauea, you can see the sulfur dioxide contents there. There's the Kilauea sulfur plume. And it's pretty beefy, as there are some pretty beefy eruptions happening. Sulfur dioxide maps. All right, let me put the chats back on the screen here. Let's see. Distracted humans are bad drivers, and non-functional AI is the worst driver, with zero accountability for the companies that create the junky vehicles that crash all by themselves. Torontonians. Okay, thank you. Canada has officially been in the USA since the Dew Line mid-50s. The Marion Lewis says, I live in Toronto, down by Ontario. Let me put some relevant data on the screen and not be a real son of a bit turn. These are old maps. Please ignore these old maps. Let's show the jet streams. "56 centimeters in one day, new PR. Interesting. I ride a 56 centimeter bike. Did you know? The Marion Lewis says, I live in Toronto, down by Lake Ontario, and there is not really a lot of snow. Seems like weather porn to me. I don't mind. Folks are coming together, I suppose. Yeah, it's always interesting to see what happens when you have a disaster, and you ought to see the snowbanks. I'll make a video. I'll make a short later today, and I'm going to put Nancy Sinatra's Sugar Town on that as an audio accompaniment because it's sugary. There are snowbanks everywhere that are 8 feet tall. If you want to build a snow fort, folks, this is the week, baby. This is the snow fort week of snow fort weeks. There are igloos to collapse on you everywhere waiting to be built. So don't get stuck under thousands of tons of snow, please. Mike says, I'm in Burlington and Mount St. Louis on the weekend. We got nuked. Yeah, man. Areas got really plastered with snow around here. Monday was until noon. I mean, the neighborhood is pretty much shut down, but it rapidly got cleared out. So shout out to PennDOT and to Turf Pro and to the neighbors for a gargantuan effort. Anyway, there are the jet streams of the Western world. You can see this double jet stream over the Western U.S. here converging, pulling cold air down from central Canada here. And the jet stream map, that'll show you what your weather's doing from a very general perspective. Here are surface winds, and we've got a nice offshore wind here on the Atlantic coast. Surface winds of the east. There you go. Jet streams of the east. Jet streams of the central world. And your surface winds. Shout out to our viewers from all around the planet. Let's show some forecasts here as people are going to be freaked out about more snow. So let's keep showing positive snow depth change forecasts of GFS 72-hour variety. We're also going to show the two-meter temperature anomaly forecast since we have such cold, 20 degrees below normal for places like Texas, the whole center of the country here, and most of the east, 2/3 of the country here, seeing temperatures like 16 to 20 degrees Celsius below normal. And we'll also show the jet stream forecast, which is upper dynamics, 250 millibar winds. Again, they're all 72-hour GFS forecasts. If you want a specific tweaking of a forecast in your area, let us know. We will take it under advisement. So here's the jet stream forecast. It looks like there's going to be a respite there as the cold air finally pushes its way up into New England. It's going to be cold in Maine and New York and New Hampshire and Vermont. Here's a temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius. Wow. Look at those Ohio temperatures. 23, 24 degrees Celsius below normal there. Also, Pennsylvania pushing 20 degrees Celsius below normal. Last but not least, GFS 72-hour accumulated positive snow depth change forecast in inches. That's where you can expect the white stuff to fall, and the only heavy stuff is expected to be around the lakes. The great ones. Oh my God, King Charles owns Canada. We send money to the crown every year. That is a weird thing, right? How does that even work? I mean, King Charles doesn't own Canada. Is he somehow in charge of the military or something? It's very weird, the affiliation between Canada and the UK. I don't understand it. I don't trust him. And, and yeah. Let's show one more image here. How about if we show, for something different, the water vapor map for the entire Western world. And then we'll close this mother out. We do have viewers from south of the equator. Shout out to Batman Bruce Minas of Brazil. Hopefully you've tuned in syndication, Bruce. Maybe it's too early for you here. It's almost too early for me here. But in any case, there's the water vapor map for the Western world. It's time to close this thing out. Thanks to everybody who's tuned in. Congratulations. I realize the channel exists. Don't forget to press like, subscribe if you're new. Otherwise, you won't see the content. Check out our shorts. There's one coming out today, Sugar Town, and Sugar Loins. And let's see. Yeah, so that's what's up. Press that share button and visit that link. Smashomash.com is the homepage. And we'll see you soon here at the Smash News Network. These busted name of news. I've been your host, Dan, aka Smashomash. Signing off, and until next time, may that solar wind be at your back.